My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Brenna O'Malley. It's June 17th, 2025, in the Nicholson Library at Linfield University in McMinnville. Brenna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
The first question to get things started is why wine?
It's the perfect blend of art and science. And then wine also brings people together, and that's the other thing that drives me. From a family of mostly introverts, and I'm an extrovert, and I love talking to people. Because I started in kitchens, I was kind of the odd man out in that way. So yeah, just the art, the science, and the people, all of that brought together is sort of the perfect combination for my passion and drive.
So tell me about your upbringing, where you're born and raised, and your early life.
I grew up in Spokane, Washington, but I was born in Portland, and so grew up coming back through Oregon a lot for vacations and stuff. My mom fell in love with the Oregon coast while they were here, so we spent summers over here a lot. So I got comfortable with Portland. I am a student of life, but as it turns out, not a great student in school. I love learning. I have to be hands-on. It's got to be moving, and you can't make me do something that seems redundant. So schoolwork was a terrible proposition for me, but I did great on tests. And so I bounced around trying to figure out what to do. My first run at college was a musical theater performance degree, because of course I fit in with the theater kids. And quickly realized that as much as I loved that, there wasn't really a place for someone who looked like me to make money doing that. And bounced back out and home and was doing real estate, and that was like killing my soul. And then I started doing photography for real estate, and that was a little better because we had the art aspect. And the guy I was working with most closely, Dan, on Fridays, we would throw together some sort of charcuterie and wine and stop working at 3 and just like hang out with everybody in the office. And I started bringing in like dips, and then it became like more, and suddenly I was bringing in like whole like meals. And he's like, "Why aren't you cooking?" And I was like, "Why am I not cooking?" And so I took about a year and a half, worked 2 jobs like a crazy person. One at Dick's Hamburgers in Spokane, which is the old school walk-up drive-in, been there since the early 60s. If you know it, you know it. It's whammies and fries and fresh cut fish and chips. It was the first place I worked turning 17, and that on and off kind of gave me an idea of the fact that I could do that all day and find joy in it, even though it was simple. So yeah, I busted my butt and was comfortable with Oregon, and the food scene was good here. We're in the mid-teens at that time, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna make the jump to Portland. I was also, at that time, very closeted, and Portland felt very safe for me in that way too, because I knew who I was, and I needed to figure out how to let everybody else know who I was, and to do that I had to get away. So yeah, Portland was a great landing scene. I worked in food carts to start. A Cajun Life was my first kitchen gig. Chris Fontenot from Eunice, Louisiana. And it was all induction burners, right? Because you're just making big pots full of different kinds of soup, essentially, that you put over rice. But it's so good. I learned the patience it takes to make a brown roux, just laboring over that. Boudin and crawfish étouffée, and fell in love and started looking for more ways to build my kitchen skills. I ended up on a mac and cheese and like gourmet grilled cheese like walk-up place in Beaverton, and that place got bought by a guy named David who was opening an Italian restaurant in the same block in Bethany Village. And he hired this woman, Donna Freeman, who came in to manage both places because he also bought the mac and cheese place. And she was my first mentor, and she scooped me up immediately and was like, you're going to be my front of house person. You're going to be great. You love people. We're going to train you to be the best server there is. Like, you're going to learn all about wine and all these things. You know, she's got she did her level 1 somm, came up through like Vegas, worked for Rosemary's and B&B, and just like great like restaurant sense. I think of her a lot of times as like an Ella Brennan kind of figure, just like she knew, never cooked, but knew what it was supposed to taste like, knew what it was supposed to look like, understood the components, and then also just like had this gift for dealing with people wherever they were at, meeting people wherever they were at. And so she tried to form me into a server, and I was just like, man, I really want to be back in the kitchen. But I've got this job at a fine dining place and I don't want to wreck it. So I really want to be back in the kitchen. And the chef at the time quit like weeks before opening. And so the sous chef got like very quickly promoted, and he was my age, Nick. And I was like, Nick, now you need someone in the kitchen, right? And he's like, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, Donna, you got to split me. I really want to cook. Like, can I do like 2 days in the kitchen and 3 days on the floor, like whatever it is? And she agreed. And of course, I was horrible as a server at the time and awesome in the kitchen. And so, because that's what I wanted to do. That's where I threw my passion in. And so that was my first kitchen job at Brooklyn Trattoria, where I finally got to experience fine dining and what service and attention to detail and creativity in a kitchen could really look like. And again, the benefit of Donna's amazing restaurant sense. She was always pushing us harder to do better, to do more, to be cleaner, to be tighter, to be, you know, just everything we possibly could be for the sake of the experience of the guests. And that's something I've carried with me. So, yeah. And while I was there, I was learning, but I didn't feel like I was learning fast enough. And so I enrolled in culinary school at OCI. I was like, I can do 9 months, get through a certificate program. Like, this is, like, I can power through this and I'll keep working and that'll keep me happy. And I don't know how I did that. School was 30 hours a week. Work was about 45 hours a week. I was essentially the sous chef and everything but name, the way that Nick relied on me in the kitchen. And and then all of my schoolwork on top of it. But the fun thing about OCI or culinary school in general is that you spend 3 hours a day in production, in a kitchen, making things. So I was just spending all day cooking. And I loved it. Vikram Vaide was my first teacher, and then Chef Brody was my second teacher. And while I was with Chef Brody, so just 4 months in, I started applying for other jobs because I could tell Donna was getting ready to move on from Brooklyn Trattoria, and as much as I'd enjoyed working with Nick, I felt like I'd pretty much learned what I could from him, because he was a really young chef at the time and still kind of figuring his stuff out. So I wasn't like that far behind him. And so I started applying for other jobs, and this one popped up from the Dentons in Bistro Agnes. And it had just barely opened, and I remember being super stoked because the Dentons were people that I had like looked up while I was still in Spokane, figuring out who I wanted to like target and try to work for when I got there. I was like, all right, I'm never gonna get this, but I'm gonna apply anyways. Just job for a cook, but maybe I'll get it. And I showed up to the interview. It was the first time I showed up to an interview in a suit instead of a dress. I got this rad like daisy blazer and had on like black slacks and really cool derbies, and was so overdressed compared to everybody else showing up, just like the quintessential nerd. I think they were probably like, oh God, this one's weird. But I loved that outfit. I looked great. I felt confident, and that confidence got me the job. They were in the middle of restaurant week when I got hired. And again, a new restaurant, months out of opening after they'd transferred it from Superbite, and they threw me right into saute. So I skipped garde manger, I skipped the grill, I skipped all of the stations in between. They threw me right onto the hot station, and I had 4 days of training, and that was it. And when you're on saute and Agnes, the way that open kitchen was set up, you're right at the front. Like you're there's a bar stool, like right here while you're up here cooking. So I was like, this is also performance art now too. It's satisfied this theater part of me. And while working there, I was watching lineups happen, which I hadn't seen before, the pre-shift meetings. And the floor manager, Josh, would talk about wine, and I would get in trouble for stopping my prep and listening to him talk about wine. Because the guy had a ton of passion, and just like, somebody who's passionate sucks you in. It's sort of impossible to ignore. And he took notice, and it started happening once in a while where I'd be back in the prep area and after lineup, and he'd come back and he'd have a little glass of whatever they'd tasted for me and take me through it so that I would stop getting in trouble, but could still get the information. So, and he then introduced me to Park Avenue wines, where you could do flights, and they would do blind flights, and you could try to guess, old world, new world, and then the vintage and the varietal. And if you could get those three things right about everything on your flight, you didn't pay for it. But it was still like a $15, $16 way for me to taste 3 or 4 wines that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And so I did that a lot. And that's how I started developing a palate. I knew what I was tasting, had no idea why I was tasting what I was tasting, but was learning to enjoy it and falling in love with the culture of it. It was just another part of the food thing and the culture, obviously. And but I stayed in cooking for years after that. I worked for them at Ox as well before moving on to Il Solito with Matt Ziegler, doing Italian food. Pasta is really still my deepest food love. I love the zen of actual pasta prep with your hands. And then pan sauces there's a high degree of technicality to get that right every time, to get the right amount in the plate and on the noodles, and to get the vegetables and whatever else is in there all cooked at the right place when they all cook at different paces. And I still love to do that. So yeah, Matt Ziegler at Il Solito, and then COVID. I didn't cook for 6 months, just stayed at home. I did cook in my ex's apartment. She had this tiny apartment on Morrison, right around the corner from the Holocene. And so I started doing an Instagram series that I called My Tiny Ass Kitchen. And I only did like 5 or 6 of them, but it was something to keep the depression about not cooking at bay. And it was insane. It was a kitchen that I could turn around in if I like angled and shifted. Like, it was so little. But, you make it work. And I wasn't sure I was going to go back to cooking, but a friend that I'd met while doing some catering on the side, because you don't make a ton of money as a cook, so you always gig work too. So I worked a bunch for Hunt and Gather with Andrew and Laura and their executive chef at the time, Kara, who I really liked. But she introduced me to Cameron Dunlap, and he was at the Fireside downtown on Northwest 23rd, which is the Fireside is really a bar program, and the bartenders there were, I just remember being like, whoa, this is just cooking but different. These guys they were in the kitchen prepping with us every day, getting ready for what was happening out front, and I was like, oh, I think I want to do that. I think that's the next thing for me, because I'm getting kind of tired of kitchens. And tired of the grind and tired of the bad elements that seem to be in every single one of them and sort of ruin it for everyone. And being a woman in the industry, even when you look masculine, still sucks. On the back-o side, the back of house side, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of things that make it uncomfortable. Not so where I'm at now, which is wonderful. But that was starting to get to me finally, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna hang out here and then I'll try to get into bartending. And so I applied a bunch of places for bar back, sports bars. Wasn't trying to like be snooty or anything, just like wanted to get my foot in the door, because I knew like bartending is to who you know. It just is. Somebody's got to give you a chance, and nobody wants to do that to someone that they don't know. And was just getting no bites. And in the meantime, Cameron was getting ready to leave Fireside and open his own project. He's like, I'm going to do this foraged and wild food thing that I think is really important. Like, do you want to learn and do this with me? And I was like, yeah, that sounds better than this. Like, let's go small. Let's go someplace where I can like be more involved in every aspect of running the restaurant. And so I helped open Morkella in Northeast Portland. And fell in love with foraging. So he gave me another really amazing hobby. Oregon is amazing for that. There's something growing that you can eat all year here, which I find magical and amazing. And suddenly I was working with ingredients I'd never worked with again. And I was like, just this huge learning curve. I like to joke that I'm not happy unless I'm drinking from a fire hydrant of information. It needs to be on blast all the time. That's like how I find fulfillment. So we did that, and after about 6 months, it was clear that his leadership as a business owner wasn't really jiving with the way I wanted to see someone running a business, especially as invested as I was in starting that. And so I kind of started looking for a bar gig again. And again, just like no bites and feeling stuck and thinking, all right, so cooking is it. Like, I got to just like keep looking for the right fit for me in the kitchen, or maybe I leave. And so I was also kind of considering going back to school and trying to push myself through that, just like dreading it the whole time. And Chef Kara from Hunt and Gather called me and was like, hey, I've got this spot over on Northwest. It's rotisserie chicken and it's a wine bar. It was called Rotigo. And she's like, I can get you a job in the front. She's like, you want a bartend? She's like, I can get you a job working in the bar. And I was like, done, sold, sign me up. This is it. This is how I get in, and this is how I transition. And so I got to work there with Kara, and very briefly, a woman named Kate. And Kate was responsible for the wine program. She exited like a couple days after I got there, but like left behind this insanely cool wine list. And so I learned her sensibilities by tasting my way through the list. And then the bartender there was also fresh and young and not super experienced, but they were trying to do craft. They were trying to incorporate a lot of sherry and vermouth and wine-based products into their cocktail program. And so we threw our heads together, and I got to be really collaborative with her, which was really amazing. The people who owned the place had quite a lot of money, and so they didn't care that we played a little bit, which is sort of best case scenario for someone like me. So we got to sit down and taste and say, yeah, well, 3 bottles of that, 2 bottles of that, 6 bottles of that, and yeah, we'll see you next week for some more. and maintained the integrity of the wine list, but those are also just like playing. I got to play for a year. Mackenzie, the other bartender, left maybe 4 months after I got there. And so then the bar program just became mine. And I was responsible for everything with the reps. And I worked really closely with Emily, who was at Handcrafted. That was the first book that I kind of tasted my way through as any sort of beverage manager. They decided to shut Rotigo and reopen it as a Mediterranean restaurant. And I was like, well, that's not me. So here we are again. And Kara was being headhunted by the previous beverage manager, Kate's husband, Andrew Mossbleck, for this place called The Ground in Carlton. And Andrew said, is there anybody else that we should talk to? And she's like, yeah, you should talk to O'Malley. And so he's like, okay, bring her out. And Kate's like, yeah, you want O'Malley. She worked with me for 2 days, but you want to talk to O'Malley. And I was like, oh, I've been headhunted out in that area before. I don't want to leave the city. Like, no thanks. And Andrew's like, well, just come out with Kara. Just come out, check it out, see what you think. It's beautiful, you're gonna have a day. We'll pay for dinner while you're here. Like, you'll get to run around the farm. And I was like, well, that part sounds like fun. Okay, sure. We'll run around the farm and I'll get free dinner. That sounds great. And he's like, all right, the restaurant's called Humble Spirit. And I was like, Humble Spirit? Why? Like, is it about the spirits? And he's like, no, you'll see when you get here. So we got the farm tour with Kara. We were in the gator, just rolling around. We have the cute Highland cows. So they're all shaggy and adorable. I remember getting down to the pig farm, and he's like, all right, we're here at the pig barn. And I was like, what? There's no smell. And he's like, yeah, there is no smell. Our pigs, it's a Korean style of farming that means that they're clean. And so there's no bad smell. They get to forage, they get to eat from the troughs, but it was amazing. I fell in love with the sensibility of the ground, the permaculture, which I'd kind of like delved into with some roommates in Spokane for a while. The garden, which at the time was only like a ½ acre, but Chef and Justin were working so closely together to figure out what the restaurant needed, how the farm could provide that, but also what the farm could provide that the restaurant could figure out how to use. Like, there was this really beautiful back and forth. And I was halfway sold before we even got to the restaurant, which took me by surprise. We sat up at the car house, which is this huge garage with an office attached to it, where we have like meetings and big lunches and stuff, and met the owners, Frank and Brenda, that day, and had an actual interview, which I did not plan on. So I was in dusty jeans and Doc Martens and my favorite plaid shirt, because I thought I was just going to go hang out on a farm for the day. And Brenda comes in and she's got 3 German Shepherds swarming around her feet. And I just stopped talking to everybody and got down on the level with the dogs, because dogs before humans. And and that immediately endeared me to Brenda. And Frank and I have a special relationship. He was impressed that I don't, it's not that I don't care, but it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. I'm going to tell you what I see and how I feel pretty straight. And Frank loved that about me, and we connected really quickly. And of course, Andrew Mossbleck, who is the hospitality director, but is also this like Jedi Psalm, amazing wine sensibilities. I was also really just like falling in love with the way he shared information, freely and with joy. And so they headhunted Kara, but they got me. Kara stayed in Portland. And at first I was like, all right, I'm just gonna dip my toe in the water. We're gonna do like events only. And I did one event at Antiquum with the event manager at the time, which was Ali Petit, and was like, oh, I wanna be your friend. You're cool. And again, just like the beauty of this place. And so I went home to my partner and I was like, babe, I think I really wanna do the whole, I think I wanna go all in. She's like, we just signed a lease. We're 3 months in. And I was like, if it's worth it, it's worth the commute for 9 months. If it's not, then, I'll come back and find a job in Portland. We're still in Portland, it'll be fine. It was worth the commute for a year and 9 months, because that's how long it took to find a place once we decided we wanted to get out here. The housing thing is a problem out here right now, but it happened. We ended up in this gorgeous house in Carlton. I met people at the bar who had the place, and we made the jump. And Andrew spent 2 years teaching me how to run the beverage program, teaching me about wine, throwing everything at me. Fallen in love with Nebbiolo from Brovia and Produttori, and I've fallen in love with, God, I love champagne. I'm such a bubble hound. But he taught me the names that matter, but also that names don't matter. He showed me how to balance the importance of history and the wines from the old world that have formed everything that we do today with the new stories that are being told with not no regard, but they're innovating and history hasn't placed any confines on them. And then there's beauty in both. And I'm really grateful for that teaching. And then I'm still cooking because I'm in the bar. I get to do both. I somehow found a cake that I get to eat the whole thing. And I'm drinking from a fire hydrant constantly because I'm not just doing it in one place, I'm doing it at 3 places. So, that's how we got here.
It's a great story. I'm going to come back and talk more about Humble Spirit in a minute, but I want to back up for a minute and talk about kind of earlier on in the kitchen. You mentioned the kitchen, the cooking being the first thing that really drew you in. Yeah. Tell me about learning to cook in that way, not just for yourself, not just for fun, but learning to cook on a kitchen. What were the biggest challenges for you, and what was it that made it exciting for you?
One of the biggest challenges is we're the people in the kitchen. Kitchen people, as a general rule, are much more introverted and quiet. I am loud, I sing, I regularly break out into song. If anybody says 3 words that are a song line, I have to it's compulsive. And so I annoyed people and rubbed them the wrong way, no matter how much I tried to tone it down, because that's just not who I am. And then, like I mentioned earlier too, there are a lot of bullies in kitchens, and there can be kind of a frat mentality with all the guys in a kitchen, and that can be hard to push through, especially in the heat of service. Mm-hmm. When someone decides to turn that energy on you, it sucks. And so that was my biggest challenge. That was what was starting to suck the joy out of it for me. What I loved about it was the camaraderie. I loved the trauma bonding. I loved the art, especially the performance art at Bistro Agnes being up front like that. I remember making the steak au poivre, and every steak au poivre we made, we did the sauce in the pan for each individual steak. We didn't have pre-made sauce. I mean, a little bit, but the Bordelaise base was made. But you still had to flash Madeira in the pan. And so, I got to the point where I was pan out here, Madeira back here, squeezing it over my head, and then fire would leap out towards the person sitting on the bar stool right here. And then I loved the performative thing of being in an open kitchen. And later on in Ox, where it wasn't open, but you had so much time and quiet, and they had this beautiful setup where, especially on the Garmager station where I worked there, because I love working cold stations. Your art is everything. You don't get to cook. That's not the art of cold station. Your art is how you place things on the plate and create beauty there. So there's all these little nuances to enjoy and different ways to express art through the kitchen. And then on the other side of that, you're feeding people. It's fuel. It's like the great equalizer, right? Like I've cooked for famous people and I cooked for homeless people and everybody got to eat the same food, and I love that about food. And I also love the science of our olfactory senses being our strongest sense tied to memory. I'm a part of someone's special occasion every day and have been for nearly 15 years. And if you do it right, that smell, that wine, that sauce that was so good on that special day, it'll take them back to that special day every time. And I love that. And I have those memories and I cherish those, and getting to create those is a privilege.
As you worked into the sort of finer dining, you mentioned sort of you're not doing the whole thing, you're doing a very specific part. I'm curious about I guess, finding joy in repetition, finding joy in a small detail. It's not for everybody, so I'm curious about that. Is that something that you had to grow into, or is that something that came pretty naturally?
I think perfection isn't something that exists, and so the details are something that we're like striving to master every day. So that concept, again, of like always climbing towards better is always been there for me, especially in my career. I think that it was there, but I grow into it every day. I don't think it ever ends. And the repetition can be zen. You find other places to go in your mind while you're doing the same thing you've done every day. I remember the first time I went home after culinary school, and I was with my parents and I was in the kitchen and I was looking up at my mom and talking to her while I was chopping, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, this is how it goes. This is just fine." Like when you get those little details down, you can be other places in your head, and that's sort of how the mundane stays interesting.
So tell me about obviously the wine part of it kind of came along the way. So tell me about starting to learn wine, both personal palate enjoyment and also wine for restaurant. What were sort of the methods for you for learning wine, and what was exciting to you about learning about wine?
Wine at this point for me is mostly just on-the-job training and the luck of finding good people. I've had sometimes I call it a crash course, which is true and it isn't true, because it came in a really condensed form. I'm 2.5 years at this restaurant, 3.5 years in front of house, and I'm the beverage director for 3 F&B outlets. It's kind of crazy. But I'm also voracious and I never stop, and I say yes as often as I can and to every opportunity. And so I've been lucky to build my palate quickly because of that. And again, Andrew Mostbeck and his wife Kate, and then of course, being in the middle of wine country is just, there's endless opportunities to taste out here. Everybody wants to say hi and get you into their tasting rooms or show up at the restaurant with wine, and it's amazing. The opportunity to taste and form my palate out here has not been an issue at all. It's been coming at me so fast. And Oregon is really special. I think we make some of the best Chardonnay in the world, obviously some of the best Pinots. I think we have a lot of other opportunities to grow other varietals here and do them really well. I love sort of the way that I craft the wine list at Humble Spirit, is that if there's a varietal from the old world on the list, then I try to have a varietal from Oregon or Washington or California on the list next to it. I love to offer people kind of that comparison at the table if they want it. But I also love just like the sensibility of people coming here can have maybe something different than what they were out in the tasting rooms having all day, but that's still local, that really pairs well with the food. Because as great as Chardonnay and Pinot are, they don't go with every single type of food. And being a food person and those sensibilities still deeply rooted, the list also has to be flexible to whatever's on the menu that day, on a very dynamic menu, because we're not a restaurant that has a farm, we're a farm that has a restaurant, which is another sensibility that I'm just like so privileged to get to enjoy and honor and be a part of. So that's a little bit of the philosophy of the list. And then we opened the pub a month and a half ago, and so I got to build another like little list add-on that's all about smoked foods. Something different muscles to flex. We've got like a red Zinfandel now on from Dash, and there's this really cool Portuguese blend, but also like the Brooks Pinot because it's got a ton of leg to stand on next to the sweet barbecue, and there's a orange Muscat Syrah from Monument. It's natural and just like the funk plays amazingly with the smoke, and yeah, it's endless, and that's part of what I love. And then of course the stories, the people I get to meet. So I get to meet, the wine is beautiful, tasting it is wonderful, enjoying it with friends is amazing, enjoying it with the food is incredible. Chef Sarah is an amazing person to work with, Sarah Schaefer. But it's also the stories. Getting to know the people out here has been one of the things that's hooked me in, and Jess and I, my partner, we're saving to buy a house out here. Like, we're putting down roots. This is where we're gonna be for a while. This has gotten into my heart very deeply. And I didn't think I was ever gonna leave Portland, so.
So obviously, wine is not the only thing when it comes to beverage. You're running a full beverage menu, cocktails, all the other things. What's different about wine? How do you have to approach it differently? Do you have to think about it differently? What's different about it when it comes to building a menu like that than other spirits? Spirits
are great, but since you get to mix them and build a cocktail, you have a lot of say over the final presentation, what actually gets to the guest. You don't have that option with wine. It's in the bottle and it tastes how it tastes, and you've got to bend to its will instead of the other way around. I love opening a new bottle and tasting it and figuring out what I'm cooking that night, or going to a tasting room and knowing that chef's getting ready to work with fresh peas and smoked ham hock, and going, oh man, I need something like super mineral. Are you doing Albarino? Are you doing Gewürz? Like, what are you doing to like get me to this dish? I love approaching it from both sides, but wine tells you who it is, and you find the food to match it. So that's the biggest difference, I think, with cocktails. Yeah, like I said, you can craft them. You have more control over the final product in the moment in the restaurant. And so there's a little more forgiveness there. Also, with spirits, people know what they want to drink. With wine, there's an interaction that you get to have with people that's a little deeper, I think, a lot of times. Not always, but a lot of times. And I really enjoy those moments too, getting to talk to a guest about their palate, what they're looking for, what they've enjoyed about all the places that they've been tasting in the valley. I also love the amount of industry people that come through here. I definitely have some kind of nerdier wines on the list, and that's for them. The Domaine Trevelyan and like Verdicchio by San Lorenzo that's rested on its leaves for 18 months. Like, there's some like cool nerdy stuff on there, and that's for them. So that's fun too. I talk sometimes about the wine IQ of like our guests and how lucky we are to have such a cool spread of people coming through. So feel very, very lucky in that way.
Throwing some winemaker catnip out there and seeing what crawls in.
Yeah.
So you talked about obviously the kind of the unique approach for Humble Spirit. Tell me about I guess the menu, how the menu is determined, what your role is in sort of keeping up with that, determining that, and making sure you have what you need as the menu is changing.
Yeah. So I think right now I'm up around like 95 SKUs on the wine list, which is not big, not small. For a restaurant, they have built me a small wine room. It's off-site, but I get to start building a cellar project, which means I have something that I get to build into and leave behind, which is really exciting. So that expansion is happening. But right now I'm really reliant on wineries who keep libraries to have wines with age on the list. People here are generous and collaborative and have opened up their cellars to us, which is really amazing. And so we've gotten to have some cool stuff. I think when I first took over the wine list, it was really about like maintaining the spread so that I could sort of just like bounce around and feature different things. And now as I've gotten to work more closely with Chef Sarah and Chef Brett, and with the gardener, Justin, I get to ask for things that can be grown for the bar program. I get to understand what's coming next and know how to look forward for the wines that go with the food that's coming. So I have a little bit of backstock SKUs that I can shift in and out now based on what's on the menu. And I said earlier that Pinot and Chardonnay don't go with everything, but they sure go with a lot. So our Pinot and Chardonnay, as you can imagine, is a pretty extensive on both sides, both Burgundy and Oregon. I try to keep the list around 35-40% local altogether. I think I'm closer to 40 right now. So yeah, that's kind of how I balance things. It's about sort of covering the gambit with what's available to me, but also I'm between the foraging job that I had and kitchen job and then getting to work so closely with my sources. I always have a good handle on what's coming.
With Oregon wine and with Washington wine, obviously that's a lot of things to keep track of. There's a lot of wine out here. So I'm curious about the discovery for you. Do you find yourself mostly discovering by going out and finding? Do you find yourself discovering by people coming to you or recommendations? Like, what is kind of your method for adding new things to the list?
Yeah. Earlier on with Andrew, I didn't do as much going out. I do more of that now just because I love to experience the wine in the place where it's from as often as I can. We talked about stories. I usually get more stories that way. But the wine also just comes to me. It comes in through Humble Spirit all the time. People that want to drink it, people that want to see it on the list. I'm always sifting through emails and phone calls with requests for people to come in and show their wines off. And so it's hard. I hate saying no. And I say it way more often than I say yes. But I also say yes and it's there. And then sometimes it's next, sometimes it's there for a year. It just kind of depends on how deeply, not just I fall in love with it, but how deeply our guests fall in love with it. Sometimes the amount of times people will come back for a wine. I have several wines on the list. Like I said, people open their libraries to us and they're wines that you can't get anywhere else. And so I'll run those as long as I can and give people as much opportunity as I can for them to experience those wines. So it just kind of depends. There's other ways. I'm really lucky. It's not just Humble Spirit anymore, right? It's also the pub. So I have this other place that wine can funnel through. I also oversee the beverage program for our catering wing, which has grown hugely. We partner with wineries on site, doing pop-ups and all kinds of things. And then we also have this huge, beautiful event center in downtown McMinnville, Stillwater. It's the old Elizabeth Chambers building. So it's got its own wine history, right? Ken Wright made wine there, Domaine de Broye, and so there, hosting events and weddings and stuff, there's another avenue for me to showcase more wines from the valley. And so I have 3 places where I can share all these stories and all these bottles, and that's really, it makes it easier to say yes more often than I would otherwise.
You talk about stories, obviously, and stories being sold to you, and then you having to kind of you're selling your customers on them. So tell me about wine stories. What attracts you to a good wine story, and what do you find sells wine?
With how the wine is, so I love the science of it as well. I've been getting into vineyards as often as I can, and learning about the whole process, trying to get into a cellar this harvest a few times just to like get my hands in the whole experience. And so my sensibilities around the farm and being organic and leaving things better than you found it, those stories and those practices will draw me to a wine really quickly. I love people with diverse backgrounds coming to wine, unexpected partnerships. I mean, yeah, there's a million things to fall in love with. I don't just look for one thing. There's always an X factor about whether or not the wine is tasty, of course, but like, and you know, clean and unfaulted. But yeah, nobody has a better chance than someone else because of a specific story or a specific adversity. I think representation matters, so I obviously seek out stories from queer and people of color and women, and I'm always making sure that I give voices when I can to those stories, but they have I have the same expectations for their tastes and their quality level and the way that they produce their wine as I do for anybody who isn't. And then it's about the food. My chef training keeps everything about the wine firmly rooted in the food. So when I taste something, as soon as I get past what I'm tasting, I'm immediately thinking about what I want to taste with it. So I think that's how I choose wine. It's a million things all at once bouncing around inside my head, but it's not one particular story that will sell a bottle. I don't have one button you have to push. I have a million buttons you have to push.
And then what about translating that for customers?
That's the easy part. People tell you who they are, and then you get to share something that becomes a part of their story. That's one time in McMinnville, we were at this restaurant called Humble Spirit. I don't know why they call it Humble Spirit. But we had this wine. What was that wine? And then I get these people that come back like every year. So we've been open for 3 years, going on 4, and I've seen people 3 times because they come back each year for us to get that one wine again, and then I don't have it, but I've got something else for them, and that becomes a part of the story the next year. And yeah, the interaction is you tell me who you are and what you love, and I can show you something new that you will love. And people like to know about the time and the place. So obviously we learn as much as we can about the people who are producing our wines and share that with the guests if they're interested. But most of the time they just want something that tastes good with the food.
So it leads me to kind of a larger question, which is obviously you've been in restaurants a good long time. You've seen them from every possible angle. How do you define hospitality in a restaurant? What is it about a restaurant that is guest facing? What is it you want them to experience?
What I learned from Donna and what I learned from Chef and my GM Ryan every day is that there's service and then there's hospitality. Service is taking your order and getting your plates down and getting your silverware down before the plate is down and making sure your glass is filled, and hospitality is everything else. Hospitality is anticipating needs and noticing emotion and listening when a guest is hemming and hawing between 2 things and showing up with the other thing that they decided not to get and saying, here, have both. It's listening to them talk about, oh, I've had Pinot all day. Can you give me something different and still make it local, and being like, yeah, I can do that. Or them being like, I need something that isn't local, and I'm like, yeah, I can do that too. So anticipating and being able to fulfill needs and then crafting experience. I have bubbles from Culinary right now, rosé bubbles, And we look for any and every excuse to splash guests at the beginning of their meals. Almost everybody gets it now, because it's an easy way to make someone feel special and fun, and Corollary's got a fun story, and one that ties in closely with how we run things at our farm, so it's a great introduction to those sensibilities and what they're about to experience. And we look for a reason to say, hey, have a great time with us tonight. Here's some sparkles to get things moving. Those kinds of things, that's the hospitality part, and that's where a lot of the joy comes from, being a part of those experiences. The servers that I work with are all really professional and have been at this a while and love it. Like, this is what they choose to do with their lives, not just something they do while they go to school or something, which there's nothing wrong with. It's just a different mindset. These people have been at it for a long time, and there's this great relationship where they know when they want to see the wine person, when they're even though the servers have great knowledge of and a grasp of the wine list, but anticipating a guest that wants to see the beverage director and making that happen before they even ask to see them, and those kinds of, so yeah, just the anticipatory side of it, and then crafting the experience so that people feel special and seen and taken care of. That's the hospitality side. I don't want you to have to ask for anything, and if you do ask for something, I'm gonna make it happen by 5 times your expectations, if I can.
So you talked a little bit earlier about sort of getting into the Oregon wine industry and being hooked by it. So tell me about impressions of the Oregon wine industry so far, the people making it, the wines they're making. What is sort of the Oregon wine industry look like to you right now?
Hear it a lot. It felt canned to me at first, and now it doesn't. It just feels true, and that's that a rising tide raises all ships. That sentiment runs pretty deep here. The winemakers are invested in each other. I love hearing stories, especially in the early days of people sharing their equipment to make it work. I think about how many people have used the Carlton Winemaker Studio to launch their businesses, which is this amazing collaborative space, and the friendships and the partnerships, and everybody makes their wine somewhere other than their own place until they have their own place, and that's just how it goes here. And there's a lot of it because there's so many wineries. There's 800 or something now in the Willamette Valley.
Something like that.
Yeah. There's not 800 wineries. So there has to be this spirit of collaboration, and I love that. And I love the passion for the wine. The people that make wine here believe they make some of the best wine in the world, and they're right. Our climate is wonderful. The soil is unique and beautiful, and something else that I find really cool is there's, looking back over the last decade of vintage reports, you see the word first a lot. It's the first time we've seen this, the first time we've seen this, the first time we've dealt with this, the first time we see this, and we're still making world-class wines. And all those little bits of adversity have affected the grapes in unique ways, and it makes vintage classification really easy here, and I find that really interesting and fun as well. And then, the innovation, the sensibility around giving back and taking care of the earth. Oregon is beautiful for that reason. The farmers, the wine, all of it. People here, they care about what they leave behind, and they care about making sure that the earth and the things that we enjoy from the earth are around in longevity, and that's really important to me too. And this industry as a whole seems to care for that. It's just really fucking good wine. I'm drinking, I've done some events and stuff with Claire and Brian from Big Table Farm a couple times here recently in the past. The Palos Sandberg Pinot, and then of course the elusive Queen Chardonnay. We drink a lot of that in my house right now. It's good wine. I just got the first vintage of Ex Novo Aligote from Waller Scott, and it is blowing me away. Really fun to have on the list. There's just exceptional wines out here. And it's not stopping, and people keep opening, and there's new things and more new wines that are just a corollary. And yeah, but then there's the guys that have been here for a long time too, like Beau Ferrer and Ken Wright, and of course Irie, and those guys are still making beautiful wine as well, and still informing the way the new people come and get into it. The ground actually just planted a vineyard, and it's going to be 5 years until we see grapes that we make wine out of. But we had help from Tony Soder selecting, clones and everything going in, and then we have sheep going in today because we're going to have rotational grazing for the vines. They did half the vineyard in a flop style. And there's a lot of Wente Chardonnay down there that I'm excited to see because there's not a ton of Wente out here. Just the old and the new coming together to create what's left behind is kind of intoxicating. And everybody, again, that only happens through collaboration, and everybody wants to and is excited about doing that out here.
Such a cool perspective you have, and such a cool and now adding to it at the farm. That's really awesome. I love that. What else is planted there besides the Wente Chard?
Pommard, Pinot, 667, and what's the other Chardonnay that we planted? I can't remember off the top of my head. But I got to go up and I got to help plant, which was really fun. Awesome. I got to be in when they started putting cover crop down.
So looking ahead for yourself in the future, what have you not done yet that you want to do? Is there anything you're excited about that's on your horizon?
I've learned a lot quickly, and it still feels like a drop in the bucket. I'm going to do WSET 3s, hopefully through Linfield in the fall. Nice. So I've been tasting as much and as often as possible. But I think I need to be where I'm at for another few years, and I think I want to maybe grow with the vineyard and get more into enology. Maybe. I might stay with the restaurant forever, I don't know. The only thing I'm sure about is it's here. I need to be here for the next 7 to 10 years. This is important and special, and getting a voice in how we shape this community as we grow is something that I care about deeply and want to be involved in. I just know it'll be here, but and involved with wine somehow. That's all I can tell you.
Definitely the right place for that.
Yeah.
Lots of good options. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All the questions I have for you. Anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover that you wanted to cover today? Do you need to tell us about your ink? We've been asking about tattoos this summer a lot. If you want to tell us about your tattoos, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I have one arm that is Friday the 13th flashes. It's Sailor Jerry style. This guy in Portland at Historic, Brad DeLay, he's going to fill this arm up eventually. Just has to happen on Friday the 13th. I had to skip this one, unfortunately, but it'll eventually be all 13s. 13 is my jersey number from softball. I played softball for 12 years, and so it just kind of works out. So one of them is a dagger going through the skin. I'm a chef, got to have a knife somewhere. And then the other one is a sparrow on the back of the arm, and I got to be honest, I saw Shane from the L Word with a sparrow on the back of her arm, and I thought it was hot. So I had to get one too. No regrets.
No regrets.
I have another half sleeve. This one's all Oregon forageables with some fairies kind of mixed into it for a little bit of whimsy. But there's different mushrooms, there's chickweed, there's perfoliated miner's lettuce, bracken or fiddle ferns, and sumac, and so it's like my own little foraging guidebook on my arm. We're gonna work all the way to the ocean, down my wrist eventually. And then on my calf is the stained glass mirror from Beauty and the Beast with the rose in the center of it. And it has this is a deep cut. In the stained glass window at the beginning of the movie is the Beast's coat of arms, and his family saying in Latin is Vincit qui se vincit, and it means they conquer who first conquer themselves. Bit of a mantra, but also the first movie I saw as a kid in theaters with my mom. So that, and then when I entered culinary school, I don't remember who said it, and I don't remember where I found it, but I remember scrawling it on my first recipe book, and it was hustle until you no longer have to introduce yourself. So those are kind of driving forces for me in my philosophy of how to walk through life and career.
Fantastic. I'm so glad I asked.
It's a hodgepodge, which is, makes sense for who I am. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Taking the time, sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Talking, and obviously, congratulations on the new things at Humble Spirit. Hope you can keep your head above water there.
Yeah.
All on your plate. Thanks for sharing. We'll let you off the hook.
Thank you.
Thank you.